Hello and welcome. Today marks a big day for Ethiopia. The country has finally inaugurated Africa's biggest dam, the Grand Renaissance Dam, or the GERD. Now, Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed hailed the mega dam's inauguration. He called it a great achievement, not only for Ethiopia, but for all Africans.
Photos, videos, and words do not do the GERD justice. Only those who see it in person can understand its worth. I hope and pray that this generation comes to see the dam, and I invite all Black people to do the same. It alone demonstrates that we, as Black people, can achieve anything we plan. It is the biggest achievement in the history of Black people.
At the inaugural ceremony, the Prime Minister was joined by Kenyan President William Ruto and by the Djiboutian President Ismail Omar Guelleh. Now, the dam has been under construction since 2011. It has the potential to revolutionize Ethiopia's energy sector and to boost its economy. The multi-billion-dollar dam stands 145 meters high and stretches nearly 2 kilometers across the Blue Nile, which is a major tributary of the Nile River. The dam is designed to generate over 5,000 megawatts of electricity, which is more than double Ethiopia's current capacity. This is a big win for Ethiopia, where around 45% of the population lacks electricity, and frequent blackouts force businesses and households to rely on generators.
Previously, our daily lives relied on kerosene lamps and charcoal, which posed significant challenges. We would transport firewood to the market, selling it to buy kerosene and bread for our children. However, with the completion of the dam, our entire community is now happy.
I am excited with the progress of the dam, and we want to see more development. We also want more electricity to be part of our daily life, and we're all excited as members of the community.
The ambitious dam is fully self-financed by Ethiopia's government and its people. No foreign assistance was involved. The dam's reservoir has flooded an area larger than Greater London, and it is designed to provide a steady water supply for hydropower and irrigation downstream while limiting floods and droughts. For Ethiopia, GERD is a springboard for a better future, but its downstream neighbors see the dam as a looming disaster. The loudest opposition has come from Egypt, which depends on the Nile for over 90% of its water. The Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi has repeatedly called the dam an existential threat. Egypt has also had Donald Trump's backing during his first term, and Trump even suggested that Cairo could end up blowing up the dam. Now, Sudan has also backed Egypt's concerns over reduced water flows because of the dam. The power tussle over access to Nile water has sharpened regional rivalries. Irked by GERD's construction, Egypt has strengthened ties with Ethiopia's rivals Eritrea and Somalia. And now that the dam has been inaugurated, regional tensions are likely to rise further. Now, on one hand, Ethiopia's ambitious dam has sparked a diplomatic crisis. But on the other, it has also filled the hearts of millions of Ethiopians with hope. Hope for a better future where electricity is no longer a distant dream. And for more on this, we have with us Zemedine Negatu, a geopolitical commentator who is joining us live from Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. Welcome to First Post.
Thank you for having me, Wallison, again.
Now, how does the official launch of Ethiopia's Grand Renaissance Dam, despite the backlash from Egypt and Sudan, alter the balance of power and regional diplomacy in the Horn of Africa region?
Right. Very, very good question. Actually, you covered in your introduction, you covered a lot of the good points, valid points, but I want to add to that. As you just asked me, how does it rearrange, rejig the geopolitical situation in the Eastern and Horn and North Africa? From my perspective, I mean, Ethiopia has, in a very clear way, demonstrated to the world, not just the neighborhood, but to the world, that it is in a position, it has the capacity to deliver on a very, very large, very complex infrastructure project, which happens to be a dam. So that's also a testament. Again, when we talk about rearranging, we need to speak on real terms. So Ethiopia has clearly demonstrated it can build a $5 billion dam on its own without external financing, despite enormous challenges over the last 14 years, pressure externally, all the way from the likes of the World Bank refusing to financing, and as you indicated, some regional countries like Egypt, and to a lesser extent, Sudan resisting it. So it's a clear demonstration that now Ethiopia has always been a power to be reckoned with in the past, but for a while it had lost its way. But as I tweeted today, it has regaining its foot, and it's actually positioning itself amongst the greatest nations, not just in Africa, but in the world through its action. So it definitely rearranged it. That means now that the neighborhoods, especially the Egyptians, have to deal with Ethiopia on an equal footing, because Ethiopia now holds all the cards when it comes to power generation, economic growth, as one of the fastest growing economies, not only in Africa, but in the world. But the addition of the GERD, the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance, down to the mix will accelerate Ethiopia's growth. And also, as you know, economic power also determines geopolitical positioning. And I think in multiple fronts, Ethiopia is demonstrating that it is now ascended.
Now, on that, with Ethiopia framing the GERD as a cornerstone for economic development and energy security, as you've mentioned, while Egypt views it as an existential threat. Now, how can these conflicting national interests be reconciled? And what role could international mediation realistically play?
Right. Listen, the narrative needs to be fixed for a very simple reason. This is not an irrigation dam. This is a power generation dam. Anyone who has basic elementary engineering science education can explain that water comes in, turns the turbines, it flows out again. And I think that's why I'm saying the narrative in other parts outside of Ethiopia needs to be told correctly, that this is not going to harm Egypt, it's not going to harm Sudan. In fact, if anything, the prosperity, the livelihoods of millions of Africans beyond Ethiopia would be improved by the fact that this massive dam is going to be generating power. So I think the misunderstanding, whether intentional in some quarters or very naive way, not understanding, should be corrected to say Egypt will not be harmed because this is not an irrigation dam, period. And I think that's my main message here. Right. But also importantly, look at it. Millions of Ethiopians have been living in darkness. Okay? Is that fair? When Ethiopia has all this resource, as is demonstrated today through the inauguration of the dam, is it fair for a country of 130 million people? By the way, there are more Ethiopians than Egyptians. It's the second most populous country. So people need to ask basic questions. Why should Ethiopians be deprived of utilizing, leveraging the power, the wealth that has been given to them by God? Now, through engineering marvel, have converted it into power. That's what I think others, the narrative needs to be corrected. That's my message here.
Sure. We'll leave it there. Thank you very much for bringing us all the latest and being with us on First Post Africa.
Thank you for having me.
First Post now available in 9 languages on YouTube. English,
$36 trillion.
French,
Le FMI, comme
German,
Geschäftsführenden Direktor,
Hindi,
$30 trillion ka karjo.
Indonesian,
Pemerintah tanpa pemeriksaan.
Italian,
Sekali radikali.
Japanese,
$4 trilhões.
Portuguese,
Por causa do próprio balanço patrimonial.
Spanish.
Beautiful bill.
Go to Settings, click on Audio Track and select a language of your choice. Be the first to know what's happening around you in your first language. First Post.
Well, Africa's largest hydroelectric project, the Grand Renaissance Dam in Ethiopia, has been inaugurated. The dam is a massive engineering project that has been under construction for over a decade. Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed and regional leaders attended the inauguration ceremony. The dam is meant to double Ethiopia's electricity output and help supply power to millions. The dam has long been controversial, facing pushback from Ethiopia's neighbours along the Blue Nile River. It promises an energy revolution for the country, but for more than a decade it has also been a source of deep tensions with nearby Egypt and Sudan, which are downstream from Ethiopia, and fear the negative consequences from the mega dam.
Ethiopia's dam is a project of historic proportions. At more than 145 metres high and stretching nearly 2 kilometres across the Blue Nile River, it's not just Africa's largest hydroelectric dam, it's one of the biggest in the world. The government promised it would transform the economy and the lives of the population.
What we are essentially doing is to meet our electricity demands from one of the cleanest sources of energy. We cannot afford to continue keeping more than 65 million of our people in the dark.
But since its conception and the start of construction in 2011, it has been dogged by controversy. Egypt and Sudan both rejected an initial deal to start building the dam over fears that it would threaten their water supplies. Egypt, for one, depends on the Nile for 97% of its water and has repeatedly described the dam as an existential threat. Despite efforts over the last decade to defuse tensions, Egypt's president has always been clear about the stakes.
You will develop and grow, and I am with you. But beware that in Egypt, the people live only on the water that comes from this river.
Over the last 5 years, Ethiopia has begun filling the dam despite the lack of agreement with its downstream neighbours. And in 2022, for the first time, started generating electricity. The Prime Minister said the dam would eventually provide power for the estimated 45% of Ethiopians currently with no access to electricity, and also in future allow the country to become Africa's biggest exporter of energy. He also tried once again to reassure Ethiopia's neighbours.
As you can see, this water will generate energy while flowing as it previously flowed to Sudan and Egypt.
For many in Ethiopia, the dam has also become a source of national pride, especially as it was reportedly financed largely by Ethiopia itself without significant outside funding. Yet despite the upside for Ethiopians, critics fear the tensions, with Egypt in particular, could spill over into something bigger.
Well, Moses Crispus Okello is a senior researcher at the Institute for Security Studies in Addis Ababa. His work focuses on conflict resolution and regional security. Welcome to DW. Before we dive into the problems the dam has caused, let's first recognise what this mega project means, if we could. How significant is it for Ethiopia?
Thanks for having me. For Ethiopia, this is a monumental project. It's a dam that not only promises to transform the lives of approximately 120 million people, it's a dam that also holds a great significance symbolically, in the sense that it was domestically funded. So the psychological impact of this undertaking alone is grave. Throughout the whole week, leading up to today, the news in Ethiopia has really been about this dam. I mean, this just demonstrates the extent to which the dam will not only change Ethiopia's profile economically, but also the extent to which it is able to galvanize the population in the country politically. So this is, for Ethiopia, indeed a history-changing moment. You could say that between today on September 9th, 2025, there was an Ethiopia before and an Ethiopia after.
Moses, we've heard in that report that the dam has raised concerns about water security for Ethiopia's neighbours, Sudan and Egypt. How justified are these concerns?
Yes, indeed. From the very beginning of the construction of this dam, water security for Egypt, primarily and secondarily Sudan, have been a major concern. Egypt, that as you correctly say, depends on the Nile for 90 or so % of its fresh water sources, believes that the dam will reduce the amount of flow of water that goes down to Cairo and further on to Alexandria. So this is a big concern for Egypt. But Egypt also has another concern in the sense that the Nile also is a symbolic natural resource that politically holds the country together. So the Nile is both a source of water and also a source of identity for Egypt. For Sudan, on the other hand, Sudan floods every year about May to September timeframe, and the Nile, the God, therefore, has two different meanings for them. On the one hand, there's a belief that it might help control the flooding in Khartoum, but on the other, there is a fear that should the God have a fault of any sort, then Khartoum will be flooding. So both Egypt have concerns. Ethiopia has attempted to assuage these concerns, arguing that the engineering feat that the God is has safeguards that are able to manage the flow of water. So whether that is true indeed is something that has to be seen going forward. But all the sides in this entanglement believe in their positions, and that's where the tensions and the disagreement between Egypt, Sudan, and Ethiopia come from.
Yeah, part of your field of expertise is conflict resolution. I wonder how much does historical mistrust and regional politics affect negotiations and the viewpoints of what this dam's going to bring?
Yeah, I mean, the disagreements over the construction of the dam have never changed. From 2011, when the first stone was put on the ground, to date. So 15 years down the road, and we're still arguing about the same thing, whether the dam will reduce the water flow, or whether the dam should be used by another country for its economic benefits. So this is not one of those solutions that those problems that are easy to address. So today the dam has been complete. It's a fait accompli, but the issues remain. I do not, in my mind, foresee Ethiopia compromising on the core operation of the dam, which is now what both Khartoum and Cairo are demanding. They believe that now is a national, is a sovereign issue that cannot be compromised on. So going forward, our belief is that these three countries will continue disagreeing about this dam, and perhaps also fueled by other concerns, geopolitical as well as hegemony concerns, that will then carry them for years on end as neighbors that disagree. Whether they resolve this or not is speculative.
Moses Crispus Okello from the Institute for Security Studies in Addis Ababa. It's been great to get your input. Thanks so much.
Thank you for having me.
Now, after 14 years of construction, Ethiopia has officially inaugurated a controversial mega dam built over the River Nile. The ceremony was broadcast live on TV. Africa's largest hydroelectric project has a capacity to produce more than 5,000 megawatts of power. The government in Addis Ababa says the project on the Blue Nile will provide electricity to millions of people across the region, not just in Ethiopia. The dam will be Africa's largest hydroelectric plant, but the dam has also been at the centre of a diplomatic row between Sudan and Egypt, who both fear their essential water supplies could be affected. Kalkadan Yipaltal reports from Addis Ababa.
Ethiopia's capital and biggest city, Addis Ababa, is full of excitement as a $4 billion mega dam over the Blue Nile reaches the finish line after 14 years. For a country scarred by a devastating civil war that ended just 3 years ago and continues to face unrest, the project, officially known as the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, generates a rare sense of unity for the majority of the people. And tens of millions across the country's rural villages and remote towns are hoping they will see the benefit. One villager, Getenesh, lives in a Lamura village less than 10 kilometers outside Hawassa, a major city in southern Ethiopia. Her household, like many others in her village, does not have access to electricity. They use kerosene-powered lamps for light and firewood for cooking. It's been very tough, especially for her 3 children.
When we run out of fuel, we might spend nights in darkness. Sometimes we use firewood as a source of light. Sometimes we can't even have enough wood.
For more than a decade, her husband, Germesa, who is a farmer and a part-time carpenter, has been contributing to the national fundraising campaign for the construction of the dam from his monthly income. Hundreds of millions of dollars have been collected from the public through donations and the sale of government-issued bonds. Getenesh and Germesa are now hoping to have access to electricity. The dam began generating power to a small extent 3 years ago, and it's expected to operate with full capacity soon. Power generated from the hydroelectric plant is expected to feed into the national grid. But Ethiopia still needs to expand its networks to reach areas without electricity. That will be the next step.
For 54% of our people, they have access to electricity.
They do have access?
They do have access. Yeah. So we can take 46% is in deficit. That is what we want to reduce now in the coming 5 years. Our intention is by 2030, at least more than 90% of our nation should get access to electricity. That is how we are working upon that.
Besides providing households with electricity, Ethiopia aims to become an economic powerhouse in the Horn of Africa region, for which generating massive amounts of power could be important. The hydropower project is also expected to boost electricity exports to regional neighbors, but it has created issues for countries downstream. Over the years, there have been several rounds of talks among Ethiopia, Sudan, and Egypt to address issues raised around the building of this hydroelectric dam. However, none of these efforts have been successful, and a binding agreement has not been signed. Accusations continue to be traded, and relations remain tense. Sudan and Egypt fear the dam could affect water levels on the Nile, particularly in times of drought, something Ethiopia denies. In a recent joint statement, the two countries said the dam will continue to create a threat to their water supplies. Officials in Addis Ababa say the costs of the construction were covered by the government and contributions from the public. Now, the country is set to generate a massive source of income in addition to providing power to millions of its citizens. Kalkidan Ibeltal, BBC News, Southern Ethiopia.